This is about a very serious subject. And the one lesson I learned a long time ago, and had I known the order would not have agreed, is to follow Ron Professor. Not only because of his humor and his ability to articulate, but because of what he represents. And, you know, I know, especially recently, there was a strike in the foreign ministry, and I wrote something about, that I prepared to publish, about the lack of regard that the Israelis have, and too many others, in appreciating the service of those who represent Israel abroad. And I think that we are really privileged, and I mean this honestly, and I say it when he's not around, not as nicely, but I say that, that it is really an honor for the Jewish community, not just the state of Israel, to have somebody like Ron Professor at the United Nations. Is that the way you wrote it? No. So, you know, talking about a book before anybody's read it is like a Jewish telegram. Start worrying, details follow. So I will tell you, start being concerned. But here, in this case, you have a solution. Because Richard doesn't leave us with a cliffhanger. This is No Perils of Pauline. But maybe Volume 2 and the son of the Odyssey, the Hague Odyssey, will perhaps be more suspenseful. But he addresses something with great seriousness. And I know that many people will not understand at first the true gravitas of the subject and of the approach of the author. And, you know, we tend to dismiss the importance of the United Nations. And I understand why. You remember even a prime minister who said, shmoom. But it's a mistake. Because what happens at the United Nations is important, does have consequences. What happens at the ICC, the International Criminal Court, can have dire circumstances. Even if people don't appreciate it in the moment, when someone like Richard had the foresight to understand what the potential impact of this could be, all of us are in his debt for, number one, submitting the brief, but more importantly, for taking the time now to help create a guide for us for the future. Because this is not a one-shot deal. This is something that's going to come back over and over again. So that's why, as soon as I heard from Richard that I had the chance to come to an event in honor of Phyllis Heideman's husband, I said that I would be really honored to do so. Because Richard, as you all know, is a very talented lawyer. He is someone, unlike most lawyers, who doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the walk. And we have seen it in many regards. He's a Jewish leader, he served as president of B'nai B'rith at least twice that I know of. He continues to be a leader in B'nai B'rith and in many, many other fora where he plays a critical role, as does Phyllis, and especially an honor to work with them in the March of the Living. David Macklis is here and others. They really play a very important role there. But he also has courage as a lawyer. He took on Iran, and he won. This is a lesson to the United States, that if you stand with strength against Iran, you'll win. Weakness loses. And when you can go into a courtroom and you win at least 3 judgments that I know of, and I hope you're working on commission on these things, but at least three judgments. Don't dismiss the importance of this, not only because of the financial impact, but because of the message it sends of Iran's responsibility for terrorism. They can try to hide, but when you have Richard looking for them, it doesn't last long. And I think this is really significant. You know, people, it's a one-day story in most newspapers. You get a headline, the judgment of this amount and that amount. But it really matters. It makes a difference when Iran and others like that, Libya, are subjected to these kind of judgments and their assets are frozen or attached. It's not just the economic impact. It's an important message. And so Richard took them on and won. The same thing in terms of the ICC. As I said, it's not insignificant what happens there. Very few people follow. Very few people know what's going on in the International Criminal Court. But it will have long-term ramifications for all of us. We see it today in the BDS movement and in the efforts to delegitimize Israel. These are manifestations, outgrowths of the kind of initiative that was fought at the ICC. This is part of the same parcel. This is all one attack. It's an attack against the corporate Jew, the collective Jew, the state of Israel, but they mean all of us. And they seek to legitimize it by going to the ICC, by getting a ruling there. That gives legitimacy to this entire campaign, to the entire attack. Every time a resolution is passed, when the EU moves against the West Bank, it has nothing to do with settlements, it has nothing to do with occupation. It has to do about Israel's right to exist. It's about Jews' right to exist. And even 60 years, 70 years after the Holocaust, if you can't say I hate Jews, but you can go into the International Criminal Court and say I hate Israel, and nothing happens. That's why this is so significant. Why this court case and the filing of a brief, but more importantly, giving us the direction that we can follow in the future. I know it's complicated and people have so many issues and we see so many problems that it's hard. But when you say Israel doesn't have the right to defend itself, by putting up a barrier, we built one on Mexico. There are 13 countries put up barriers. Nobody says a word. But nobody had greater legitimacy in doing it than Israel putting up a fence to stop terrorists. So when you say Israel doesn't have the right to defend its citizens, it says Jews don't have the right to defend themselves. That Israel doesn't have the standing of every other country if the prime responsibility of the state to defend its citizens is denied. And that is the gravitas of this very important decision. We see the hypocrisy of the world. 100,000 people dead in Syria, Copts in Egypt being killed, Christians in Iran. Where's the outcry? Where's the condemnation? E1, you'd think, is the most important piece of territory. I went to the United Nations during the debate. I asked half a dozen people, could you show me on a map where E1 is? They thought it's in Connecticut. They had no idea where E1 is. And if they would see it, they would say, what are we fighting over this little hill that has no significance to anyone except it's a land bridge to a city with 30,000 people? Yet each of these things are important because it's part of the same campaign to deny products in the West Bank, to stamp them separately, put yellow stars on them, to do all the things that others did to us in the past for ultimately the same goal. And that's why we cannot dismiss it, that the book has great significance, the case has great significance, and our commitment to continue to fight this is so important, and to fight the indifference of the world. This is a guidebook. It's a guidebook for all of us, whether you're lawyers, whether you're lay leaders or professionals, or whether you're activists, because it presents the arguments, it makes the case, and that is something we're all going to need to do more and more often. I would suggest to Secretary Kerry that he would be well advised to read this book, because you can't have peace if you continue with the incitement, with the attacks, if you continue to undermine the foundations of the state of Israel and refuse to recognize it. These are the fundamentals for peace. It was the lesson they learned after Oslo, that if you don't take incitement seriously, you're never going to have peace. This is part of that campaign. And all of us have an obligation, because it's our future, it's the future of the state of Israel, and frankly, it's the future of the West today. You see that all of those who turned a blind eye because it was only the Jews, it was only Israel, now all of a sudden find out it's them as well. So Richard, we're really indebted to you. We thank you for this. I hope everyone will read it. I know you're going to test everyone afterwards, and I'm sure that they'll do pretty well, especially if you give the answers in advance, but they will do well. Thank you.